kind of leading into my book, I got to tell my story a little bit because I think that's what my heart is this morning. What 4 words would change your life? Think about that sentence. What 4-word phrase will change your life? 4 words changed my life. And it led me to, as you heard a little bit, meeting incredible athletes, Olympians, the Michael Jordans, the Magic Johnsons, presidents of countries, traveled over 80 countries, just a lot of opportunity. And I directly go back to these 4 words. Now, when you hear that and when you hear the introduction, you might think, I can't relate. But I think I'm more relatable. I grew up on the east side of the state, Detroit area, and I thought we were middle class. But as I've gotten older, I'm thinking we were not middle class. You see, we grew up on Kool-Aid, never could afford a Coke or a Pepsi. You had to get that at your friend's house. I cannot recall ever, it's a running joke, of ever getting any new clothes. It was all hand-me-downs from my older brothers. Give you some idea, during the wet season, the winter season, we had to put our feet in bread bags because the boots, oh, good, we have some people. All right, we're dating ourselves, okay, because our boots leaked. You hung on to them forever, right? And I look at even my faith walk, right? Sometimes I feel like God is right there, and then I feel like he doesn't even know I exist. There's times when I treat him like a vending machine, that I'm setting up chairs or I'm leading a Bible study. You owe me, God. That's such a wicked heart. And there are times that although he has sort of come through, my faith still, I grip him tight. I grip my control, my outcomes in my own hands, in my own power. And I think all of this was just last week. I'm broken, I'm messy. There's nothing real special about me up here. But I do know this, I'm a saved sinner. And I do know this, is that God uses messy, broken people. And so my heart this morning really is to encourage you in your walk, inspire you of what can be, and that there's a good, good God that absolutely loves you, whether you've gone through some tough circumstances or you're currently in something. So let's go back here a little bit. What 4 words would change your life? Anybody? This is a little participation. Can anything pop for you? Did anything come to mind? Yeah, what do you got?
God's God and I'm not.
God's God, I am not. That's good. It's pretty close. That will change your life. Yeah. I think I am getting married. Married 32 years, right? I can't imagine my life without Beth, but she has changed my life. Anything else come to mind? All right. It's a good spiritual group. We're getting deep. I was thinking more like I won the lotto. That will change your life. Or then even the tough one, right? I have brain cancer. All of these would change your life, but I'm here to share that although these are my 4 words and they actually did change my life, it first started with a guy in the Bible, Peter, and it changed Peter's life. So I have to start 1990. I just left Pepsi. I had a pretty good career. I was climbing the ladder. I felt a little burned out, and that leads a little bit into my book in a bit. Went back to grad school, and I wanted to make a pivot. I wanted to go into sports. Michael Jordan, late 80s. It was exciting, and I just kind of felt called. Sports was a big part of my life, and it really played a role in that. Obviously, 1990 is before the internet, and I think some things have changed, right? One thing that I remember clearly is just even how we look for a job. You had to go to the library. You had to go to Yellow Pages or your newspaper and look for jobs. And one thing that hasn't changed, though, guys, is that as you sent out letters, you got one rejection letter after another. That still has not changed, right? And so God began this process in me to say, isn't it easy to sort of scream that I have faith, to trust him with yeses, with answered prayer? But can you trust him with his no's for your life? And this was the beginning process as I was getting no's and trying to figure out, I felt sensed calling me to grad school and a shift, but yet I wasn't necessarily seeing God working. A professor then brokered a lunch. I had a meeting with a guy that had a sports company. Turns out he was had an office in San Diego and one in Tokyo. And he was a distributor that was exporting goods, but he shared his heart that he was looking to one day start a sports marketing company, kind of like a sponsorship of events or athlete management. I didn't think anything of it. I was using him for contacts at Nike. And so a few days later, he gave me a call. And what I thought would be, here's the name to contact, he said, I think you're the guy. I think you're the guy to start this arm for me, this sports marketing company. But there's a catch. I'm not going to pay you. And you're like, what? That doesn't make any sense. I was, I could go back to Pepsi, I had a brand management degree, I had really good offers from a couple of companies. But often when you immediately say no, right, it's like that's when God starts to say, I'll show you. And God began working on my heart like immediately through sermons, through our daily bread, through conversations with people. I had no desire to go to Japan. I didn't know anything about Japan. I didn't know anything about the language. He wanted me to start in Tokyo. Everything about it didn't make sense. And that's where I think God shows his greatest character of who he is, right? So, lesson I learned real quick, right? Don't let your mind outthink or stay stupid to the impossibles. Don't let your mind outthink your faith. And so my list was all cons. The only pro was, I guess this gets me in sports, but it wasn't anything like how I thought it should look. Professors, family, friends, everybody that would advise me said, you're crazy, that's an idiot, that's career suicide. But I felt this peace that kept whispering, saying, do you trust me? So I accepted this job, and I wish it was like a Disney movie that I could say it was the greatest decision of my life. But actually, it was worse than I ever imagined. I landed in Tokyo, and I don't know if I was just like a 24, 25-year-old clueless kid. No offense, Tyler. But I didn't even ask, or I didn't even realize that this guy was married, that he had an 18-month-old kid, and that he spent 80% of his life in San Diego, and his Japanese wife and kid were in Tokyo. I'm rooming with the 18-month-old. I have no money. He gave me $20 per day, one meal. It was pretty expensive back then. I didn't know the language. I didn't understand the culture. It was very challenging, very challenging. And of course, I'm crying out to God, what have I done? And I think back then, if you could change tickets, I would have changed the ticket. But back in the day, you couldn't change ticket. This is 1990. What's always interesting is when you have challenges or you think you're part of God's plan and it doesn't work to plan, you tend to quit. You tend to give up. And I think what I've learned also is one of the biggest lessons or encouragement to you is never trust your eyes when you're walking in obedience. It will never look like you thought it would. God's the way maker. His ways are not our ways. And so what it did for me was to push into God's word to say, I sensed you were speaking to me to come here. Why isn't this working? It took many, many months. I think almost 9 months. During that process, I found a great church, found a great community, and I eventually met my wife, Beth. Wheaton grad out on missions. We met in a church, and we eventually would get married. What pushed me out to Japan is something I want to share real quick. And if you have a Bible app, and I'll just read it real quick and listen closely. But it's a story in Luke, and it's a story really of how Peter comes to faith. He has the name of Simon at this point. He hasn't had a changed heart. And it basically says this: one day Jesus was standing at the lake. The people were crowding around him, listening to the word of God. He saw at the water's edge 2 boats left there by a fisherman. Peter was a businessman. He was a fisherman. Christ chose to go into the marketplace for one of his first public messages was borrowing this guy's business. Simon was washing nets. He got into one of Simon's boats and asked him, well, push me out on shore and let me speak a little bit. When he finished speaking, he came in and said, Simon, go back out. Now it's morning, right? Fishermen fish during the day. Now it's morning, sun's up. Go out to deep water, throw down your nets for a catch. Simon answered, Master, are you nuts? What? I worked hard all night. I haven't caught anything, but because you say so, I'll let down my nets. So when they did so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. And he signaled to his other buddies, partners in the boat, saying, come help. When Simon saw the weight of all of this fish meant provision. He was dry. My understanding, this could have been like a year's worth of salary sitting in these nets, right? His reaction wasn't, Yahoo, I hit the lotto. It was, go away from me, Lord, I'm sinful. For he and all of his companions were amazed at the catch. And then Jesus said, come with me, don't be afraid. You're going to fish for people. And then he actually leaves it behind. So as you can imagine, somebody who's not an expert telling you who you are an expert, how to run your business. To do something so countercultural is something that we often run into, but that's Christ's DNA. And that was the journey that I was on. I don't know if you have your version, but did you catch the 4 words in that phrase? Did you hear anything? If you look through there? I'll just jump to, now I've been building this up, right? So this better be a big deal. It's because you say so. This doesn't make sense to me, Jesus, but because you say so, I will obey. What I find is that Christ, you know what's best for me, and there's a power struggle goes on in our hearts in this process of what we call surrender. Surrender really is dying to self, right? It's this idea of letting go instead of gripping tight. It's this idea that everything in you wants to sort of say, the world is saying yes, and God is telling you no, like we talked about different living from Mark, right? It's, sort of laying down your self-made identity, if you will, right? But the crazy thing is that when you do die to self, you actually find life, and life in abundance in Jesus. So through this process, God begins almost like a workshop environment in my heart. I land in Tokyo, nothing like I thought, and over those 9 months, first year, he began working, chiseling away, right? And basically aligning my heart with his will and working on particular pride that I could not do this without his help. How am I going to get a client when I'm fumbling with my Japanese language? Initially, I couldn't even get to an appointment. It's so different back then. We didn't have the internet. So you struggled with getting around. I learned quickly that obedience isn't about pleasing him, thinking like I'm going to do something and that's going to please him. It's actually the opposite. That's a works mentality. Obedience actually is a heart response to what he's already done for you. His grace and mercy. And so out of that, I obey, not to earn, because I get so caught up in that vending machine. That's not God. It's seeing the gift that he has given you and walking in that. So this story played a huge role. None of it made sense. And obviously, I did not have clarity when I'm sitting still in this guy's apartment. I finally got a sale. I finally got some traction and finally kind of got going and into an apartment. So I worked in Pepsi. One of the things that I've learned quickly, right, is that opportunities are often buried in problems, right? At Pepsi, I learned that when the phone would ring, let's say after 6, 7 o'clock at night, it was trouble. There was always a fire. There was somebody complaining, or there was an employee issue, a truck broke down, something going on that it was never good. So I'm in this office one night. We're talking probably the fall of 91, and the phone rings. I'm just staring at this phone, and I'm hearing problem, and it's ringing, problem, ringing. And out of my best judgment, I picked up this phone. I don't know why. And on the other line was a partner of ours, Converse. So Converse shoes, we had a partnership with in Japan. And the guy was frantic, and he said, I need everybody to come help me. I need to shut up this shoe display at this arena. And I'm like, hey, there's nobody here. And I came up with a million excuses in my mind not to go. I've got to, it's out of my way. Now it's, 8 o'clock at night. By the time I get there, it'll be 9 o'clock at night. I have an early morning meeting. And I'll be honest, I did not say I had a faith-like attitude at that point, but I just said out of obligation for the relationship, that connection, I needed to go. So I went, not knowing why. Sure enough, this thing went on forever. It was probably close to midnight. And as we got done, and I really don't remember you ever asking, but as we got done, finally I'm like, who is this? What is this? What's going on? And at that point, turned around and in walked in who it was for, and that was for the National Basketball Association. They were there checking out Japan, and I had a conversation that helped change my life. And it was basically saying in about 6 months, we're going to partner with the Olympics. And we're going to do something unique, is that we're going to bring our NBA athletes. And we're looking out of it to launch an international business. Would you be interested? So for a couple of months, again, I don't recall how we kept in touch. You had phones. We didn't have cells. You didn't have email, right? We kept in touch. We met up. And then by March or April of 1992, I became the third hire in the around the Dream Team. I often find this, what would have happened if I didn't pick up that phone? There would have been another Michael Wozniak. Dream Team would have went on. But God sometimes gives you an opportunity. Take the coffee, take the meeting, take the unassuming, this person has nothing to give to me. You might be surprised. There's stuff going on. Opportunities have expiration dates. So obviously I took this job in a matter of months. I'm living life large. Right? You're hanging out with some well-known people. And if you're not familiar, this did even more than what David Stern thought. We thought back in the day, no internet, there wasn't too much opportunity to approach the world. There wasn't that platform. So the World Cup of Soccer and the Olympics were the only two brands that were in over 100 countries. Everybody knew about them. And he hooked the wagon, the brand, to borrow the equity, and the hope was to start this international division. And boy, did it ever start. It was wildfire, guys, craziness. And so we immediately opened up 7 offices and got married, was in New York, and my wife and I then moved back to Tokyo to open up that office. I want to take you now where it sort of speeds up and where we are today. And that's this conversation I had with David Stern as I was going to open up the office over 30 years ago. But he said something that I still remembered, and it was pretty powerful, and I've unpacked it in different ways. But that he said, remember, you're going over, I was young, 30, late 30s, or late 20s, and being sent over. And despite the culture, he said, always remember you lead people, manage stuff. And he was talking about the power of connection. He was talking about the value in relationships. He was talking about people are people. What often happens is that I find that people don't work for companies, they work for people. And people don't leave companies, they leave bad bosses. And it's weird is that sometimes when people get in a position of authority, they begin to use people as production. And that's this idea, I think, of don't treating your people and manage them like they're stuff, like they're a widget. Because really what that is transactional leadership, right? So when that production stops, that relationship breaks, right? It's basically saying, hey, you do this, I will give you this, sort of like a contract, right? And that's stuff that maybe I lived through in the 90s, and we're getting better at that, but there's a long ways to go. And that's where I kind of do invest in healthy leaders. But as a leader, if you try to build connection, when you make people feel heard, understood, walls start coming down, right? When they know you get them, and really want the best for them, and they sense that, right? There's a shift that takes place, right? They're no longer working for you, but they're working with you. And they'll run through a wall alongside of you. And I call this covenantal leadership, and that's really the basis of the book. I think we have a real issue with attrition, lack of workforce. How can we create healthy cultures and keep our people? And I'm sort of branding and going out and calling this covenantal leadership. And basically, what that means is basically you're building trust, care, and assured purpose or mission together. You're actually fighting for the person's highest good. You see so much potential in them that they don't see it themselves, that you're investing and building into them to become the best version that God has called them to be. And I think when that happens, you begin to see transparency rise, right? Collaboration increases, engagement, skyrockets, right? And influence grows. It doesn't mean you're laying down being nice, and that's where I'm going to get into a tool that's been very, very effective. So a leadership tool that you have on your desk or on your tables there is something I'm calling Sport Challenge Matrix. I don't know if you have seen this before, but I want to walk through something real quick because I think this can really move the needle for you. I hope you will find it valuable. A lot of my clients do. I coach off of a lot of visual tools because I think so often people hear with their eyes and they need to see it. They can smile and nod and then forget 4 kids, right? Or even me, my wife to me, right? So I do a lot of this, and I think it helps you because it will do a lot of the heavy lifting in your own leadership and growing your people. So what is support? Sports things like, right, giving them training, giving them the tools to do their job, right? They need cell phone, whatever equipment in the environment, right? Oops. It can also mean encouragement, using words to affirm. When you think of challenge can just simply mean a far enough deadline to give people the opportunity to do that and not do it in a stressful environment. Stretch goals, KPIs, those kinds of things, some clarity, obviously feedback, all create sport and challenge. One of the things that I see, though, is when things get out of whack, certain things happen. So if you know a leader, and clearly not you, anybody, but when you have high challenge and not enough support, you almost get like this dictator mindset or heart set, right? They're yelling, they're cracking the whip, they're micromanaging, they're controlling a lot of it, they're bottlenecking a lot of it. And basically they're weaponizing challenge. They're trying to squeeze more production out of you by riding you hard, to be honest. And you might think, boy, I've had bosses like that. I've had bosses like that, right? And what it does is it doesn't necessarily, or maybe short term, drive you to that. But really, it's that transactional leadership style, right? That eventually burns you out and you create fear. I had to laugh. One of my clients, as I asked, so how are meetings going? Do you have a lot of engagement? And he's like, no, it's great. They totally understand everything. Nobody ever says anything. And I'm like, he sees it as great. And then I pull him aside and I'm like, how often then do they leave that meeting, huddle up and talk about you behind your back? Oh, there's some issues there. Maybe you've got too much challenge, right? The opposite, you got too much support and not enough challenge, right? These are those that are looking to build friendships. They're looking to maybe do the work or not push the person. They're the mama bears, if you will. that maybe provide too much kindness. And as a faith believer, we think naturally we have to fall into that. But again, maybe that's not creating the best environment for them or for you. So even this of providing too much support isn't healthy. What I see here often is they reason and say, I'll just do it for them. It's quicker, but also they've had a tough day. They have a lot going on. And what does that send? A message of lack of accountability, doesn't it? And believe me, as a parent, your kids know when you're arguing 3 rooms down the hall, you come out all smiles. They see something totally different. They can sense the room. Your people can sense it too. You're not fooling anybody. And as we avoid accountability, right, it's the mess that grows underneath by avoiding it that just snowballs. So this isn't totally healthy either. You get this other one where you absolutely have no challenge, no support. And this is just like indifference. This is like, I don't care, you don't care. It sends the message the leader isn't passionate about his role or about what he's doing. Sets an agenda and people come late, whatever. The people that to solve whatever this issue is aren't in the room, and they're not leading well enough to know if we want to solve this, we need the right people, right? From a parent view, it's like the idea that, you've got a graduate 26-year-old living in your basement playing video games all day and not looking for a job, and they're always coming up with an excuse, and you're not charging them rent, right? I don't have that, but right? That idea like, he's had a tough day today. No, that's not getting them, I don't believe, to be the best version of themselves. Where I believe that has the greatest influence, and I believe leadership is influence, and I believe that God, as a faith believer, calls us to influence the marketplace. It's this quadrant. It's challenge and support, and it's finding the right balance. This is saying, if I really do want this covenantal type of leading, and I really do want your best, customizing your leadership to accomplish what you're trying to do to grow the person, right? One size doesn't fit all. Again, 4 kids, I learned quickly, 2 of them really need encouragement to get the job done. Does not work on the other 2. The other 2 need challenge. Jump, 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 but the other ones will shut down if I provide too much challenge. So I'm learning to balance. Well, you two in your leadership, we've got to learn to balance, because what happens here is when that employee or person knows you believe in them, or knows, like I've had 3 times people say, you're the guy, when I don't see it in myself. I felt like an imposter going over to Japan to open up the MBA office. Who am I? They only hire Ivy League. I'm a nobody, a poor kid. They believed or saw something in me, right? That's the same concept. Boy, talk about connection. When someone believes in you, right? So I call that liberation, because it creates this freedom now. And so when you have to have those tough conversations, they're so much easier because they feel you get them and then you are for them. Do you see the difference? So let me ask you a question that how you respond. What is it like to be on the other side of you? What's your leadership like? How are people seeing you, viewing you? How do you come across? What I want you to do, and you got a pen there on the table, is I want you to do 3 things here, and then we'll come back. One is put your initials on where you feel you are at in your leadership style on this grid. Don't fake it. You're not turning it into me. It's between you and you. Be transparent. Where do you think you are? Do you even want to be in the liberation box? Or do you want to sit with control? I don't know, but you just be honest. Secondly, if you have direct reports, you have people underneath you, leadership team, whatever, put their initials. Where are they on this grid? And then lastly, you as a company, you don't have to be the owner in here, but what you see, it's a good indicator of your culture. Where are you at? Are you really for your people? Do you want your people to excel? Do you want them to leave and open up their own companies? Are you cheering them on? Or do you want to control them and crack the whip or just, whatever? So take it just a couple minutes. Where do you think you are? And then the idea is often that I spend time with people, right, to look at the gap. Maybe, yeah, I do want to be in this particular quadrant. I want my people to be here. What can I do, right? You've heard the old John Maxwell, right? You're the lid. So true. How can you expect your people to be living in the other quadrant, liberate, when you yourself aren't? And this ties back to my story, right? It ties back to surrender. How do I really stay in that spot of wanting the best, even having people on an advancement path, maybe even grow past me, and I see that, and you know this God well enough to say, I think this person should run our company. I had that with a client. What's helped me is this little piece of rope. So I put this in my pocket every single day, at least 25 years. And it's a reminder to die to self. It's a reminder that God put me here. God equipped me. God is in these relationships, but God has chosen me to play this role right now. And that my people are a gift. They're not a pain in the butt. They're a gift. And then I have a window, whether that's 1 month or 30 years with this person. And I want to build that connection where hopefully they would outgrow even me. People have used this rope to either carry with them, put them in their car, put them on their desk. And I have one for everybody. And on your way out, you can grab one if this would be helpful. It's helpful to die in yourself, but I feel like it's helpful for me to stay in the liberate box. Because like I said, it's so easy to get tangled up into what is mine and what I've earned versus I get to. So how do you think you could use this kind of tool? Now, I will say I do 2 formats. This one obviously would be for my client and let's say the leadership team. And then I have a blank one. And then how could you use the blank version with your people or your culture? Any ideas? And I can share how people are using this. Did you see them? Yeah.
You could have your employees fill out how they feel like they have a lot of challenges and no support.
Yeah. And really what you're referring to is those one-on-ones. It's been very effective spending time. Again, I'm not an advocate of annual reviews. I'm an advocate of continuous coaching up so you can course correct. And that's how you do that is simply through the one-on-one. Yeah. You're going to say?
I think I'd make almost a scatter chart.
Yeah.
For the various departments, so you can see, is there a manager that maybe is not living pure liberate? Are they protect or are they doing something different?
That's right.
I can tell you, we operated a culture of liberate for a while. Through now the second CEO after me, it's a dominate.
Isn't that interesting? You can see it.
Change.
Right.
People left the organization.
That's right.
A lot of negatives.
The employee drift. But for you to ask of your employee, you've got to make it clear this is your culture. And as a result, there's a disconnect. They see dominate, and you're asking the people to play in the upper box of liberate. And that's what happens. Gosh darn it. They end up leaving. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. You don't want people to leave if you've hired them well and trained them well, right? So feedback one-on-one. I think a natural one is, and we all dread it, even I do, the hard conversations, right? This does the heavy lifting, and this explains your why, right? Just like you said, Stephen, is that we want to sit in this box. This is where I see you. Let's talk about it. This is what I see you need: more encouragement or more challenge, more KPIs, more whatever to get you here. And that's why we want you here. Again, we see you as X here, as someone we want 30 years here. And that helps explain the why. I can't tell you the amount of work I do on people avoiding the hard conversation, the sitting in the car, the stresses, because we make it all about me. But it's so much easier when you've got a visual tool that you can explain to people what your thinking is in our heart, right? And it drives that transparency, that intimacy, that then allows you actually a deeper connection with your people. So we got one-on-one, we've got those hard conversations. I think naturally the other one is just the accountability, right? Accountability is like leprosy to people. I have no idea why. It's got a really brand. If someone wants to invest in a brand image, it needs to be accountability. It's always associated negatively. And as a leader, we can change that, right? I think it's challenged, but then maybe the collaboration is off to make it negative. But you as a company, and I'm helping people to learn, start to celebrate more, right? That support side and accountability. When they do the KPIs, maybe that's more important than the actual result that you agreed to, right? But you're talking through it and you're holding them and you're understanding the give and take again. Why did this certain thing happen? What did we fail as a company? Where's some growth that needs to be on your side too? We don't do enough. And this is a true example that happened recently. A guy that was a dominator, and this opened up his whole world, and he's trying really hard. It's been about 10 months now. Through the course, he's lost good people, right? So he's trying to change his ways, and obviously his weakness is he's weak on support. So I asked him, I said, simply start writing hand sticky notes, Post-it notes. And when somebody you see either does their job or does it well, or you're sure, just start sticking the note. So his assistant, obviously he's been burning through assistants, doesn't even see it. And so over the last 9 months, he's been intentionally, totally out of his comfort zone, writing these sticky notes. And then recently, one day, he had to find something on her desk late at night, opens her drawer. She's kept every one. And it broke him. Yeah. And I always say, you know, we all have a beginning, but we choose our start. Today's the day. You can flip your leadership. You can improve your leadership. You can invest and reconcile that relationship. It's not too late. In your own leadership and in your faith walk as well. So I'll leave you with that. As Becky said, we have a book for everybody if you want it. It's on your way out. I'll have a rope as well if you want it. But I'm here to say that 83% of Christ's teaching was not in a church. It was in the marketplace. And he always used parables that were working everyday stories to connect. He was about covenantal connection and leadership. And that's my heart and my drum as well as you go into your marketplace as well. So thank you.